Welcome to Fear Files, where nightmares come to life and every shadow hides a tale of terror. Step into a world where the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blur, and every story is crafted to send shivers down your spine. Prepare to be captivated by our chilling narratives where fear takes center stage and suspense knows no bounds. Are you ready to face the darkness? Join us if you dare, and let the haunting begin.
Emily Harris had always prided herself on being a patient and loving mother. Her daughter, Lucy, was a bright, cheerful child who filled their home with laughter and light. But recently, Emily had noticed a change in Lucy. The once colorful and innocent drawings that decorated their fridge had taken a dark and disturbing turn. Lucy now drew shadowy figures with glowing eyes, figures that seemed to loom over smaller, helpless figures in a way that sent chills down Emily's spine. The more detailed the drawings became, the more Lucy's behavior shifted. She began speaking in an unnaturally deep voice, spouting eerie knowledge of family secrets that she couldn't possibly know. Harper's Hollow, their quiet suburban town, had always seemed idyllic, yet it held a dark past, one that Emily had never paid much attention to. Tales of a cursed lineage, old rituals, and unexplained disappearances were whispered among the older residents. Emily had dismissed these as mere superstitions, but now she couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had taken hold of her daughter. Emily sought help from every source she could think of. She spoke to doctors, psychologists, and even a local priest, but none could explain Lucy's behavior. Desperate, she turned to the town's historian, Mr. Whitlock, an elderly man with a wealth of knowledge about Harper's Hollow. "Emily, there are things in this town's past that are better left buried," Mr. Whitlock warned, his voice trembling. "But if you truly believe your daughter is in danger, you must know the story of the Shadow." The Shadow was an ancient entity, a malevolent spirit that fed on fear and suffering. According to legend, it had been summoned by a misguided ancestor during the town's early days, seeking power and protection. Instead, they had unleashed a force of darkness that had plagued the town for generations. As Mr. Whitlock recounted the tale, Emily felt a growing sense of dread. The descriptions matched Lucy's drawings perfectly. The glowing eyes, the shadowy figure. It was all too real. "How do I stop it?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "There is a way," Mr. Whitlock replied, his eyes dark with fear. "But it is dangerous. You must confront the Shadow in its own realm, the place where it was first summoned. Only there can you hope to banish it." Determined to save her daughter, Emily prepared for the confrontation. She gathered the necessary items, guided by Mr. Whitlock's instructions. The night was dark and foreboding as she made her way to the old, abandoned house on the outskirts of town, the place where the Shadow had been summoned. Inside, the air was thick with malevolence. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, and the temperature dropped with every step Emily took. She called out to the Shadow, demanding it release her daughter. A chilling voice echoed through the darkness. "You think you can defeat me? I have existed for centuries. Your daughter is mine." Emily's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. She recited the incantation Mr. Whitlock had given her, feeling a surge of energy as she did. The Shadow materialized before her, its glowing eyes burning with rage. In a battle of wills, Emily fought the entity with every ounce of strength she had. She focused on her love for Lucy, using it as a shield against the Shadow's darkness. Slowly, the entity began to weaken, its form flickering like a dying flame. With one final desperate push, Emily banished the Shadow back to its realm. The house fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Exhausted, Emily collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her face. She returned home to find Lucy asleep, her face peaceful for the first time in weeks. The drawings had disappeared, and the unnatural voice was gone. Emily held her daughter close, vowing to protect her from any darkness that might threaten them again. The town of Harper's Hollow remained quiet, the shadows at bay, for now. But Emily knew that some forces were never truly gone, only waiting for the right moment to return. And when that time came, she would be ready. Emily's life settled into a fragile semblance of normalcy in the days that followed. The threat of the shadow had receded, but its memory lingered like a dark stain on their lives. She watched Lucy closely, monitoring every interaction, every drawing, every word that came from her lips. One evening, as Emily and Lucy sat together working on a puzzle, Lucy looked up, her blue eyes wide and innocent. "Mommy, why don't I remember those scary dreams anymore?" Emily's heart tightened. She forced a smile. "Because they're gone now, sweetheart. Mommy made sure of it." Lucy tilted her head as if pondering something. "Mr. Shadow was really angry. He said bad things about you." Emily's smile faltered. "What did he say?" Lucy hesitated. "He said you wouldn't be able to keep me safe. He said he's always watching." A chill ran down Emily's spine. She fought to keep her voice steady. "Mr. Shadow is gone, Lucy. He can't hurt you anymore." Lucy nodded, satisfied for now, but Emily's unease grew. She knew the Shadow's influence might still linger in some dark corner of their lives, waiting for another chance to strike. Months passed, and life seemed to return to normal. Emily focused on her teaching, finding solace in the routine and the bright faces of her students. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that the Shadow's presence still haunted her family. One day, as Emily was preparing her classroom for a new school year, she noticed a child staring intently at one of the blank walls. It was Samuel, a quiet boy known for his vivid imagination. "Samuel, what are you looking at?" Emily asked, trying to keep her tone light. Samuel turned, his eyes wide with fear. "The Shadow Man, Miss Harris. He's back." Emily's blood ran cold. She knelt down to Samuel's level. "What do you mean, Samuel? What did you see?" Samuel's voice trembled. "A tall man with glowing eyes. He's hiding in the shadows. He says he's looking for Lucy." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She fought to keep her composure. "It's okay, Samuel. You're safe here. Why don't you go play with the other kids?" As Samuel ran off, Emily's mind raced. She needed to protect Lucy, but she couldn't confront this alone. She decided to visit Mr. Whitlock again, hoping he could provide more insight. Mr. Whitlock's house was dark and cluttered, filled with ancient books and artifacts. Emily explained what Samuel had seen, her voice tinged with desperation. Mr. Whitlock nodded gravely. "The shadow is persistent. It seems it has found a new way to manifest. We need to uncover more about its origins if we're to defeat it permanently." He handed Emily a leather-bound journal. This belonged to one of the town's founders. It details their encounters with the shadow and the rituals they used to keep it at bay. Perhaps it holds the key to ending this once and for all. Emily spent countless nights poring over the journal, searching for answers. The entries were filled with cryptic references to old rituals and dark magic. One passage stood out. A detailed description of a ritual that could seal the shadow away forever, but it required a great sacrifice. Emily's heart sank. The ritual demanded the essence of innocence, the pure soul of a child. She knew she could never sacrifice Lucy, but perhaps there was another way. She decided to confront the shadow once more, armed with the knowledge from the journal. She enlisted the help of Mr. Whitlock and a few trusted friends, including Father Mackenzie, the local priest who had once tried to help Lucy. The night of the ritual was dark and stormy, the perfect backdrop for the battle that lay ahead. They gathered at the old abandoned house, the place where the shadow had first been summoned. As they began the ritual, Emily could feel the air grow thick with malevolence. Shadows danced around them, and a deep, chilling voice echoed through the room. "You cannot defeat me. I have existed for centuries. Your efforts are futile." Emily stood her ground, reciting the incantations from the journal. She focused on her love for Lucy, channeling it into a force strong enough to combat the shadow's darkness. Father Mackenzie sprinkled holy water, chanting prayers of protection. The shadow materialized before them, its form more menacing than ever. "You think you can banish me? I am eternal." Emily stepped forward, holding a small vial of Lucy's blood, an alternative sacrifice she hoped would suffice. "You have no power here," she declared. "This ends now." With a final desperate incantation, Emily cast the vial into the center of the ritual circle. The shadow screamed in rage, its form flickering like a dying flame. Slowly, it began to dissipate, drawn back into the darkness from whence it came. The house fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Emily collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her face. She had done it. She had defeated the shadow. Emily returned home to find Lucy asleep, her face peaceful for the first time in months. The drawings had disappeared, and the unnatural voice was gone. Emily held her daughter close, vowing to protect her from any darkness that might threaten them again. The town of Harper's Hollow remained quiet, the shadows at bay, for now. But Emily knew that some forces were never truly gone, only waiting for the right moment to return. And when that time came, she would be ready. In the following months, Emily continued to teach, finding joy in the innocence and wonder of her students. She remained vigilant, always on guard for any signs of the shadow's return. She knew the battle was not over, but she also knew she was not alone. Mr. Whitlock continued his research, delving deeper into the town's dark history. Father Mackenzie provided spiritual support, offering prayers and guidance. Together, they formed a small but determined group dedicated to protecting Harper's Hollow from the forces of darkness. Emily's bond with Lucy grew stronger, their love a beacon of light in the face of encroaching shadows. They spent more time together, cherishing the simple moments of joy and laughter. Emily knew that as long as they had each other, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The memory of the shadow lingered, a reminder of the battle they had fought and the strength they had found within themselves. Emily knew that the darkness might return, but she also knew that love and courage could banish even the deepest shadows. And so, life in Harper's Hollow continued, a delicate balance between light and dark, hope and fear. Emily, Lucy, and their friends remained vigilant, ready to protect their town from the unseen forces that threatened to disturb their peace. They had faced the darkness once and emerged victorious, and they would do so again if needed. For in the end, it was the strength of their love and the power of their unity that would keep the shadows at bay. And as long as they stood together, they knew they could overcome any darkness that dared to cross their path. James Caldwell had always been fascinated by the history and legends of his hometown, Ravenswood. Nestled in the countryside, the village was surrounded by dense woods and ancient ruins, remnants of a past steeped in mystery. For years, James had studied the folklore and stories that had been passed down through generations, but he never imagined that one day those tales would come to life in the most terrifying way. It began with his grandmother, Edith Caldwell, a gentle and loving woman known throughout the village for her kindness. Edith had always been a pillar of strength in James's life, guiding him with her wisdom and warmth. But recently, something had changed. Edith started muttering strange, ancient incantations in her sleep, her once gentle eyes flickering with a sinister gleam. Objects began to move mysteriously around her presence, and an unexplainable chill seemed to follow her wherever she went. James was worried. He knew his grandmother well, and this behavior was completely out of character. He decided to stay with her for a few days, hoping to understand what was happening. One night, as he sat by her bedside, he heard her muttering in a language he couldn't recognize. He leaned closer, trying to make out the words, when suddenly her eyes snapped open, glowing with an unnatural light. "Grandmother," he whispered, fear tightening his chest. Edith's voice was low and menacing, nothing like her usual soft tone. "You cannot stop him, James. He has returned for what is his." James recoiled, heart pounding. Who? Who has returned?" But Edith's eyes closed again, her breathing evening out as if nothing had happened. James sat back, shaken. He knew he had to find answers, and quickly. The next day, James visited the local historian, Margaret Winslow, a woman well-versed in the dark history of Ravenswood. He recounted his grandmother's strange behavior, hoping Margaret could shed some light on the situation. Margaret listened intently, her face growing pale. "James, this is worse than I feared. The incantations you described are ancient summoning rituals used by an occultist named Mordecai Blackwood over a century ago. He was a dark sorcerer who terrorized this village, performing unspeakable rituals to gain power. The Caldwell family was instrumental in stopping him, and it seems his spirit has returned for revenge." James felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. What can I do? How do I stop him? Margaret shook her head. "It's not going to be easy. You'll need to find the place where Mordecai performed his final ritual. There, you might find a way to banish his spirit once and for all." Armed with Margaret's advice, James delved into the history of Ravenswood, searching for any clues that might lead him to Mordecai's final ritual site. He spent days poring over old maps and documents, piecing together fragments of information. Finally, he found a reference to an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of the village, a place long rumored to be cursed. James gathered his courage and decided to visit the mansion, hoping it held the answers he sought. The house was dilapidated, its windows shattered and walls covered in ivy. As he stepped inside, a sense of foreboding washed over him. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the shadows seemed to whisper his name. In the center of the main hall, James found a large, ornate mirror, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. He wiped it clean, revealing an inscription etched into the glass. "Here lies the gateway to the spirit world." His heart pounded as he read the words. He knew he had found the right place. Now, he needed to find a way to use it to banish Mordecai's spirit. James spent the next few days researching ancient rituals and incantations, hoping to find a way to counter Mordecai's dark magic. He reached out to Father Donovan, the village priest, for guidance. Father Donovan, a man of strong faith and unwavering resolve, agreed to help. Together, they prepared for the ritual, gathering the necessary ingredients and symbols to perform a banishment. On the night of the full moon, they returned to the mansion, ready to face the malevolent spirit. As they began the ritual, the air grew cold, and a chilling wind swept through the hall. Shadows danced around them, and a deep, menacing voice echoed through the room. "You dare to challenge me? I am eternal." James stood his ground, reciting the incantations with Father Donovan by his side. The mirror began to glow with an eerie light, and the shadows coalesced into the form of Mordecai Blackwood. His eyes burned with hatred, and his presence exuded a dark power. "You will not banish me," Mordecai hissed. "I will have my revenge." James focused on his love for his grandmother, channeling it into a force strong enough to combat the darkness. He recited the final incantation, pouring every ounce of his strength into the words. The mirror's glow intensified, and Mordecai's form began to waver. With a final desperate scream, Mordecai's spirit was drawn into the mirror, vanishing into the depths of the spirit world. The mirror shattered, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. James collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. James returned home to find Edith sitting by the window, her eyes clear and gentle once more. She smiled at him, a hint of sadness in her gaze. "You did it, James. You saved me." Tears filled James's eyes as he embraced his grandmother. "I couldn't have done it without you, grandmother." Life in Ravenswood slowly returned to normal, but James knew the battle was not over. He remained vigilant, ready to protect his family and his village from any future threats. The memory of Mordecai's spirit lingered, a reminder of the darkness that could return at any moment. In the months that followed, James continued his research, determined to learn more about the dark forces that had plagued his family. He worked closely with Margaret Winslow and Father Donovan, forming a small but dedicated group committed to protecting Ravenswood from supernatural threats. Edith, though frail, found new strength in her grandson's resolve. She shared stories of the past, revealing family secrets and old rituals that had been passed down through generations. Together, they uncovered the hidden history of the Caldwell family, learning from their ancestors' mistakes and triumphs. As winter gave way to spring, a sense of peace settled over Ravenswood. The villagers went about their daily lives, unaware of the silent guardians watching over them. James, Margaret, and Father Donovan knew that the darkness was never truly gone, but they were prepared to face whatever came their way. And so, life in Ravenswood continued, a delicate balance between light and dark, hope and fear. The village remained a place of mystery and legend, but it was also a place of love and resilience. As long as the Caldwell family stood together, they knew they could overcome any darkness that dared to cross their path. Sarah Lawson had always considered her family to be the anchor of her life. Growing up in Eldermore, she cherished the quiet, predictable rhythm of their days. However, that predictability was shattered when her younger brother, David, returned after a long, unexplained absence. David had always been the wild one, a journalist who pursued dangerous stories in far-off places. When he vanished a year ago, the family feared the worst. His sudden return should have been a moment of joy, but instead it filled Sarah with an inexplicable sense of dread. David stood at the front door, looking strangely calm and distant. His once bright eyes now seemed hollow, and a faint, unsettling smile played on his lips. He embraced their mother, Jane, and father, Robert, with a detached warmth that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. That evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, David's eerie transformation became more apparent. He spoke little, his words carefully chosen and delivered in an unnaturally serene tone. But it was his predictions that truly unsettled Sarah. "Tomorrow, it will rain," David said, his voice a soft murmur. "The river will flood, and the old bridge will collapse." The family exchanged uneasy glances. Eldermore had experienced its share of strange weather, but David's calm certainty was unnerving. Sarah tried to laugh it off. "David, you've always had a flair for the dramatic." David's eyes locked onto hers, his gaze piercing. "You'll see, Sarah. You'll see." The next day, just as David had predicted, dark clouds gathered over Eldermore. Rain poured down in torrents, and by evening the river had swollen dangerously. The old bridge, a relic from the town's early days, creaked and groaned before collapsing into the rushing waters. Fear tightened its grip on Sarah's heart. She couldn't dismiss David's prediction as a mere coincidence. Something was terribly wrong. Over the following weeks, David's predictions grew more frequent and more disturbing. He foresaw accidents, illnesses, and conflicts with chilling accuracy. Each premonition came true, plunging the family and the town into a state of constant anxiety. Sarah's logical mind struggled to make sense of it all. She confided in her best friend, Lisa, hoping for a rational explanation. "I don't know what to think anymore," Sarah admitted, her voice trembling. "David's predictions are tearing us apart. I don't recognize him." Lisa, ever the skeptic, frowned. "Maybe he's just been through a lot. Stress can do strange things to people." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something far more sinister was at play. Desperate for answers, Sarah turned to Elder Moore's local historian, Mr. Harold Merton. He was an eccentric old man with a deep knowledge of the town's history and its many legends. Mr. Merton listened carefully as Sarah recounted David's behavior and his eerie predictions. He nodded slowly, his expression grave. "There is an old legend in Eldermoor," he began. "It speaks of a malevolent spirit known as the Harbinger. This entity is said to possess individuals, using them as vessels to sow chaos and despair. It thrives on the fear and suffering it causes." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Do you think that's what's happening to David?" Mr. Merton sighed. "It's possible. The Harbinger is a cunning and ancient spirit. It could be using David to unleash its dark influence on our town." Determined to save her brother, Sarah delved into the town's archives, searching for any information on the Harbinger and how to banish it. She spent countless hours poring over dusty books and forgotten manuscripts, piecing together the story of the malevolent entity. She learned that the Harbinger had plagued Eldermoor in the past, leaving a trail of tragedy and destruction. It was said that the spirit could be banished through a ritual involving sacred symbols and incantations, but the details were vague and fragmented. As Sarah delved deeper, she discovered a journal belonging to an ancestor, Abigail Lawson, who had encountered the Harbinger centuries ago. Abigail's writings detailed her struggle to protect her family and the town from the spirit's wrath. Sarah's heart ached as she read Abigail's words. She felt a profound connection to her ancestor, drawing strength from her determination and courage. With the journal as her guide, Sarah began preparing for the ritual. She gathered the necessary ingredients and symbols, enlisting the help of Father Michael, the town's priest. Father Michael was a kind and steadfast man, his faith unwavering even in the face of such darkness. Together, they planned the ritual for the next full moon, a time when the veil between worlds was said to be thinnest. As the day approached, Sarah's anxiety grew. She knew the risks involved, but she couldn't abandon her brother to the malevolent entity controlling him. The night of the full moon arrived, casting an eerie glow over Eldermoor. Sarah and Father Michael gathered in the old church, the air thick with anticipation. David, his expression eerily serene, stood in the center of the room, bound by sacred symbols drawn in chalk. Sarah's voice wavered as she began the incantations, her heart pounding with fear and determination. Father Michael stood beside her, his presence a source of comfort and strength. As the ritual progressed, David's serene facade began to crack. His eyes flickered with a malevolent gleam, and his body convulsed violently. The Harbinger's voice, low and menacing, echoed through the room. "You cannot banish me," it hissed. "I am eternal." Sarah's resolve hardened. She focused on her love for her brother, channeling it into a force strong enough to combat the darkness. She recited the final incantation, her voice ringing with determination. The symbols on the floor glowed with an otherworldly light, and David's body went rigid. The Harbinger let out a piercing scream, its dark presence being drawn out of David and into the symbols. With a final, desperate wail, the entity was banished, the air around them clearing as the oppressive darkness lifted. David collapsed, unconscious but free from the Harbinger's grip. Sarah rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. "You're safe now, David," she whispered. "You're safe." In the days that followed, Eldermoor slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. David, though shaken and weak, began to recover, his memories of his possession hazy and fragmented. The town, once again peaceful, whispered of Sarah's bravery and the triumph over the Harbinger. Sarah knew that the darkness was never truly gone, but she was prepared to face whatever came their way. She had learned that love and determination could overcome even the most malevolent forces. And as long as her family stood together, they could weather any storm. Life in Eldermoor continued, a delicate balance between light and dark, hope and fear. The town remained a place of mystery and legend, but it was also a place of love and resilience. Sarah and her family, forever changed by their ordeal, found strength in their bond, knowing they could overcome any darkness that dared to cross their path.
Thank you for joining us in the world of Fear Files, where shadows dance and every story leaves its mark. If you felt the chill of our tales and the thrill of our nightmares, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a spine-tingling update. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know which tales haunt your dreams. Until next time, remember, the darkness is always watching, and the true horror is only a heartbeat away. Stay vigilant and sleep well, if you can.